Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to the dkNET office hours. I'm Ko-Wei. I'm the host and the moderator for today's office hour. For those who are new to dkNET, dkNET is a research resource information portal founded by NIDDK. We provide several services, including resource and tools that support rigor and reproducibility. We also help researchers discover useful research resources and keep up to date on new tools and services. We have the Hypothesis Center to assist research in generating research hypotheses and the fair data management services to help make your data fair. For more information, please visit dkNET.org. And during today's office hour, it's our pleasure to have a lineup of experts who are joining us to share their knowledge and answer your questions. Our panel, including Dr. Jeffrey Grethe, co-PI of dkNET, Dr. Rebecca Rodriguez, who serves as the Repository Program Director at NIDDK. We also have Ms. Reaya Reuss, who is the Chief of Staff to the Deputy Director at NIDDK, and the support team members, Ms. Alisa Fujimoto and Alexandra Shilayonskaya from the NIDDK Central Repository to answer your questions. So without any further ado, I will turn it over to Dr. Jeffrey Grethe to get us started. Jeff, over to you.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I was going to give just a couple introductory slides so we can get onto our guests from NIDDK. And so as Ko-Wei mentioned, we do have a number of different resource options within dkNET. This orange bulleted area here is really focused on the new data management and sharing mandates. So if you want to explore this, after the office hours, we have a main information page, which is on the left, the research data management. And then if you do have any further questions after today's webinar, we do have a request assistance form that you can fill out, or you can just contact us via email or the help button on the bottom of the website. In terms of the management information resources, we've been maintaining and continue to maintain a page that has lots of different information resources for you. Top highlighted one here are the NIDDK information resources that will be discussed today. So this is a good jumping off page, for all this information. And then we also do have a repository listing and finder that we've implemented within dkNET. And so this is another place where you can explore potential repositories, for your data. And we have links out to external resources such as fairsharing.org to provide information about, for example, data standards that the repositories use. And also information on upload, download type processes at each of the repositories. So that was my very brief overview of some of the resources that dkNET provides. But without further ado, why don't we turn it over to our guests today?
All right, thanks, Dr. And I'm sorry, it's Grethe and the other organizers for inviting us to participate in the office hours today. We're just gonna, we already had a little bit of grounding, but we're gonna begin today's presentation with just a quick overview of the new NIH policy on data management and sharing, and then the resources that are available to NIDDK investigators to understand and meet the policy requirements. Just as a reminder, NIH has a really long-standing commitment to the sharing of research results. Since 2003, NIH's data sharing policy has expected that final research data will be made as widely and freely available as possible while safeguarding the privacy of participants and protecting confidential and proprietary data. In addition, investigators submitting applications where greater than 500,000 in resources were requested needed to include and address data sharing in their applications. The The 2023 DMS policy, which became effective on January 25th, sets a consistent minimum expectation for data management and sharing for all scientific data at any funding level. The policy requirements are fairly straightforward. NIH expects that investigators and institutions will plan for and budget for the management and sharing of scientific data as defined, that they will submit a DMS plan for review when applying for funding, and that they will comply with that approved DMS plan. In addition, individual institutes, centers, and offices may elaborate additional policies and expectations for data management and sharing within their investigators. Now, we acknowledge that the practical application of these requirements are certainly more nuanced, and so a number of resources have been developed to assist investigators. And the next slide. So the NIH sharing website includes much more detail about the policy, its intersections with other NIH policies, such as genomic data sharing or clinical trials, as well as additional tools and links to educational resources for investigators to familiarize themselves. Next slide. In December, NIDDK added a data management and sharing resource to our research resources on the public website. If you'll click one time, the pages in this resource provide additional information, guidance, and tools to assist investigators that are funded or applying for funding by NIDDK. On the next slide, in particular, NIDDK provides education on planning for data management and sharing, guidance for each of the 6 elements that NIH has outlined should comprise a data management and sharing plan, as well as a few relevant example plans and additional tools. Next, when it comes to selecting a repository for your data, both NIH and NIDDK guidance encourages investigators and researchers to share their scientific data via established repositories that exemplify a set of desired characteristics to ensure that data are managed and shared in ways that are consistent with fair data principles. And we've already had a little bit of a conversation on that. The NIDDK Central Repository is one such repository if your project meets certain criteria and eligibility for submission. To assist investigators who may not be able to submit their data to the NIDDK Central Repository at this time, we have provided a repository considerations tool that may assist you in identifying another appropriate repository or repositories for the data. And I think it interfaces well with the dkNET resources that were just mentioned. So before I turn it over to Rebecca, I do want to encourage all of our investigators to reach out to their program contacts if you have any questions, concerns, or clarifications about the DMS policy. We are continuing to consider and develop new resources to help educate the community, and we're here to help. So with that, I will turn it over to Rebecca to talk a little bit more about the DK Central Repository.
Thanks, Reaya, and thank you for having us and the opportunity to present on behalf of the Central Repository. As you can see, NIDDK data science space is vast and extends far beyond the repository program itself. As Reaya mentioned, we play a key role in NIDDK's data fairness goals, and we make possible the conduct of new secondary research and reproducibility studies, which are at the center of the intent of the data sharing and management policy. Our program does meet the desirable characteristics of data repositories and is ready to assist NIDDK helping the extramural community fulfill the requirements and the spirit of the new policy. And we will go over eligibility and requirements to deposit in a few slides. What do we do? Well, we support NIDDK's evolving mission and strategic goals in data science, and that is to expand the scientific progress and disseminate research that impacts health outcomes. We support eligible NIDDK extramurally funded investigators through the entire life cycle. We do that before collecting scientific data and by providing long-term access to those resources. We have a rapidly growing number of study collections maintained centrally, which have a rich, well-characterized, and expertly curated resources. We do this with the help of our contracted support teams, Booz Allen Hamilton, and you will hear from some of them today, and Precision for Medicine. You're welcome to visit our website for detailed information, and we are including here a QR code to make it easy for you to access. If you're gonna have the slides, this is gonna link you as well to our homepage. At a glance, we primarily support the receipt and distribution of resources that are generated by consortia groups. Currently, we have about 175 collections from over 200 and some consortia we support that are available for request. This enables other investigators to develop and test new hypotheses without the need to collect new data or biospecimens. In the last 5 years alone, we have granted access to over 1,200 requests, from which about 10% already have published results. In those, some of them may be eligible to deposit those data back into the repository. So I'm gonna hand it off to Ms. Alyssa Fujimoto, who is currently the data management lead with Booz Allen, and will provide details on the services, eligibility, and data submission requirements. Alyssa?
Yep, thanks, Rebecca. So for today, we wanted to cover some of NIDDK Central Repository services and features that we want to highlight. So some of the services, as Rebecca had mentioned, we do support studies throughout the entire life cycle. So for example, before a study even begins, we assist in reviewing data and biospecimen sharing plans, as well as informed consent language documents to ensure that future data sharing is included. When data are ready to be submitted to the repository, we provide extensive curation services in which we verify de-identification, and we also conduct a dataset integrity check, or a DSIC, which entails replicating the results that are in a peer-reviewed publication, for example, some descriptive statistics, and being able to replicate that with the data received. Once the data are approved and available for request within our central repository, we do support the requests for these resources throughout there and be able to provide them for secondary use. Some of the features we want to highlight is that the NIDDK Central Repository is a cloud-based platform, and we have controlled access to resources, meaning that although you can search for the information, the data are not publicly available. They have to go through that request process that I had alluded to, and requests entail having an IRB approval, as well as a use agreement established between the requester's institution and NIDDK before access is granted to that data. Our data packages have version controlling implemented, as well as digital object identifiers, or DOIs, that have been minted through DataCite for all the collections housed within our repository. Next slide. In terms of who's eligible to submit, per the NIDDK sharing policy of 2013, as Rebecca mentioned, any extramurally supported clinical trials or other clinical research studies that had significant NIDDK involvement are eligible to submit, along with ancillary studies. For requesters that have received access to resources from the Central Repository and generated their own secondary research, perhaps new data, new materials, are also eligible to submit back to the Central Repository their new materials generated at the discretion of NIDDK to be made available for future secondary use for future requesters. If there is a non-NIDDK funded study, however, if it has applicability to the NIDDK research mission or would be of significant benefit, those also can be submitted to the Central Repository at the discretion of NIDDK. In terms of the submission requirements, at the beginning of the life cycle, as the study is being planned, data and biospecimen sharing plans must first be reviewed and approved by NIDDK before participants are enrolled. That also includes the informed consent language to make sure that future sharing is included so that NIDDK can maximize its investment on research. And when data are ready to be submitted, all data and metadata will be submitted to the repository. And if there are specimens collected, a representative specimen set would be sent to the NIDDK biorepository. For metadata, we mean information about the study, any study attributes. And for the actual study data, we mean the raw individual level data sets that maybe have been collected through a case report form or a CRF, as well as any analytical data sets that have derived variables that might align to a publication. The data housed within NIDDK CR are limited data sets, meaning that they have been redacted of 16 HIPAA identifiers. Some of you may be familiar with the 18 HIPAA identifiers or the safe harbor method of de-identification. The main difference between limited data sets and the HIPAA 18 are that limited data sets can include full dates. It can also include original coded participant IDs, such as a participant number 12345, and also location information as granular as a city or town. So when data are ready to be transmitted, we set up a secure file transfer link to be able to send the data to us so that we can review it for any PII, PHI considerations, and also perform that data set integrity check. Along with the data, we also ask that study documentation be submitted, such as a protocol, manual of operations, any code books or data dictionaries, as well as any data collection instruments, and any supplemental documentation, such as SAS programs or formats catalog, that would be helpful for any future users of that data to meaningfully use and understand that information and be able to generate proper secondary research. For additional information, we have a link to our website that talks more about submission requirements. In terms of studies that might not be eligible to submit their data to the Central Repository, we do support them in a different way. We have what's called federated data sharing, in which a study can submit to us their metadata and attributes and study documents and be featured on our website with their own study overview page. Instead of having the data housed within the Central Repository, we'll have a link to the other external resource, such as a different repository, where interested investigators would follow that link and be able to access that data stored outside of the Central Repository. So between having the data directly housed within NIDDK and this federated data sharing method, NIDDK truly embodies fair data sharing principles, which FAIR, as everyone knows, is an acronym for making data findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And part of the interoperability component can be further enhanced as studies are planning before they even start collecting data, that they incorporate common data elements, any clinical standards, ontologies, or terminologies to be able to facilitate that data interoperability as data are shared and combined across different repositories. And with that, I will turn it back to Rebecca for some closing remarks.
Thank you, Elisa. And we just want to make sure that everybody has the contact information. We thank you again for having us today. We, of course, we're going to be here for questions, but feel free to reach out to our contact information for NIDDK specific policy that's referring to the DMS. If it's something that is related to the repository itself and the repository administration, we have also included here the contact information for inquiries. We also provide some sort of way to assist you with minting DOIs. If you could please have any questions, send them directly to the NIDDK data site account. Other than that, I pass it over